Okay, good morning. Thanks for being here. If you're able to be here, as always, thank you for making the effort to get up and joining me for the live stream. If you're watching the video later, I hope your week's been going well. Good morning, that one kid. Nice to see you here. Okay, what are we in? Week 5. So this is kind of that long March part of the semester where we just kind of keep moving along with stuff. There aren't any real big highlights coming up. Morning, Robo Genko. So let me make sure that you're seeing what I'm seeing before I say it. Yeah, okay. So I'll blow it up a little bit, but the next sort of highlight event is the midterm, the week of October 17th. So that's still a ways out there yet, but just keep it on your radar that that's the week of the midterm. That's the only thing you do that week, is the midterm exam. I will do a review during the live stream that week, but then you have the rest of the week to work on the exam, and it is bigger than a normal lab by a fair amount. So try to schedule that in so that you're not sitting down to work on the midterm on Sunday night, October 23rd. Anyway, that feels like a long way out, but it'll get on top of us a lot sooner than we might think. Okay, so you guys did a great job, by the way, in discussion this week. So there's a lot of good. There's videos, and some people hunted down. Somebody found Vim Adventures, which is a really cool tutorial that helps you develop, in my opinion, at least muscle memory. So there's a lot of good materials in your discussion to help you with learning how to use the VI or Vim editor, which I'm going to start using today. The only thing I can say about VI is that I hope that you will make yourself use it a little bit, and you don't have to be an expert in it, just to get to the point where you could actually open a file and make some changes or additions to that file and save it successfully is a big deal. It's a big deal to be able to generate content on a Unix system without graphics, without your mouse, without a word processor. And VI I consider to be of very high value because in my experience, it's the only text editor that I have found universally throughout the Unix and Linux worlds. Some of you came across the editor Nano, and Nano is popular because you don't have to know anything to use it, but it's not universal by any stretch either. So I would still advocate for learning VI because it is pretty much always going to be found on any Linux or Unix system. And for a while, it just feels uncomfortable, and you hit escape more than you think that you ought to need to hit escape. You have to quit without saving sometimes, which feels like a pain, but it is worth a little bit of investment just to feel like I can do this. And then you may not need it for a while, or you may discover that you really like it and you use it a lot. But give yourself a chance just by practicing with it. I'm going to do a lot of practicing today, just in building up some files that we can run commands against. Okay, so we are in week 5. So let's look through the module, and you can see that I have the agenda. So I've already gone through this and loaded this up. So we're going to add some more commands. It's a little bit funny, in my opinion, oh wait, someone's asking about Vim. So let me see what the question is. Yeah, so that one kid asked, maybe I've already got Vim running inside of the Debian because Vim style shortcuts work. So that's probably true, that one kid. If you're finding that Vim shortcuts and if you're finding Vim features when you run the VI command, it's possible that your system has kind of linked itself to the improved version of that we call Vim. Even when you run the VI command, you might find that you're running the nicer version of the editor. So that's cool. I'm going to find that out today on my minimal Debian, if that's the case or not. Okay, so more VI. We're not adding a whole lot of new stuff, just a few new things, and then we'll talk about the concept of commands kind of relating to each other a little bit for VI. But for the most part, we're just going to use VI with the small amount of commands that we have in our toolkit to generate some files, and then we will use those files to practice with some text manipulating utilities. Okay, so that first section, text tools. The reason I was saying it's a little bit funny to say text tools is because that's most of what the command line toolkit is in a Linux or a Unix system, is everything's related to working with text anyway. So saying text related tools is a little funny because that's what most of them are, and they can't help it. But anyway, text related tools. So we'll add a few new commands this week. We'll explore their features using man pages, which is something that just is good to practice so that you know the manual system is there. You can open the manual page when it's available for a command and extract usable information from it. That's our goal. All right, readings. So not a whole lot of readings this week, but they are, of course, where I get the questions for the homework, which you're all accustomed to at this point. The lab assignment. So I've already done it, but this week is the first week probably where the hands-on experiments is going to be super, super useful. So I've already opened it, but I'm just going to go show you real quick. These files that I've taken pictures of them, and the reason why they're pictures and not text is because I want to encourage you to use VI. I'm going to use VI and produce this same content on my Debian system, and then I'm going to use those files to practice with the commands that we're experiencing this week. So we get a whole bunch of new commands: head, tail, less, WC, compare, and diff. In this class, you never have to memorize commands, but I would advocate for keeping maybe a cheat sheet for yourself of the commands that we've used and a brief description at least of what it is that those commands do, so that when you're prepping for the midterm and then the final, you have this cheat sheet that you can refer to. And since the midterm and the final are open notes, you also have those as resources for being more successful on the midterm and the final. So you're going to see me create all of these files exactly like they're pictured on the hands-on experiments. And then that will give me the material that I need to practice the commands that we are practicing with this week. There are a lot. No one in the world could hope to memorize every command on a Unix system. There might be some people who have, but I certainly have not memorized them all. I tend to, of course, remember more easily the commands that I use more of. In other words, that I find the most useful to myself. Okay, so I'm going to keep that open, hands-on experiments, because that is going to be handy when we talk about the commands. And then I think that we're doing a poll this week in Piazza Discussion, and that is just meant to sort of give you a break from doing the research parts of the discussion, but still remind ourselves that we're all out there and we're all doing the same work and thinking about the same stuff. And then the normal reminders. The distribution project, the distro project, is not due until early December, but it's something that you can start whenever you want. So if you find yourself kind of developing a good rhythm in the class, it's never too early to open up that distro project and read it and then even begin to work on it. So hopefully some of you will do that, and you will sort of reduce your workload and your stress levels for later in the semester. Anyway, it's there for you if at some point you're ready to have a look at it and get going on it. Okay, I'm going to switch over to my virtual machine. So what you won't see, but what I'll have open for myself, is this hands-on experiments. And I'm going to be creating these same files on my Debian system and then running commands against them. So let's do that now. Oh, I hope I remember my password. All right, thankfully it was password, so uh, good thing. Okay, so um, I am in my home directory, and I'm showing you, I'm kind of using these as an excuse to do a little bit of review. So present working directory, once you start moving around your Linux system, this can be a handy command to remind you, where am I at right now? In what directory have I located myself? And then you'll notice that there's a few review terms. So just to make sure we don't lose our handle on these fundamentals. So I am working in the shell right now. And the shell is it's a text-based interface, right? You can see the text. You can see that there's no pictures. By interface, all I really mean is a place where I can interact with the computer. I can execute commands in the computer. I can view the results of those commands. Almost all of us are accustomed to using a graphical user interface. So our interface that we normally use is a graphical one, meaning it's pictures and windows with contents in it. And that's what we're used to. So the shell gives us a text-based or command line-based interface. Yeah, that's it. The specific shell we're using is called the Born Again shell, or bash. We haven't really dug into what is unique about the bash shell itself. It is one of many text-based interfaces that we could use in a Linux system. Bash happens to be one of the most popular ones because it's been around forever. So our shell is bash. And that simply means that bash is the specific text-based interface that we are using to interact with our computer. Okay. The last thing, well, not the last thing, but the next thing after that is the shell prompt. So when we say the shell prompt, we mean that line on the screen where the cursor is blinking at. So the cursor is sitting there blinking because it's prompting me to give it input. The shell is telling me, I'm ready for you to offer me commands, and I will go execute them and show you the results of them. So this is the prompt. On my system, the prompt consists of my username, jboyd, the @ symbol, Debian, which is the host name of my computer, a colon, and then a tilde, which in most cases is a shortcut, meaning your home directory, and then a $sign, and then a space. All of that is my prompt. And all that really is text leading up to that point where the cursor's blinking, awaiting my input. So the prompt is the place where you provide input. That's all it is. And then we will take advantages today to talk about big P path and little P path when the opportunity arises. So remember, big P path is bash storing a list of directories where it seeks out commands that you type. So when you type a command, bash has to go find that command before obviously it can execute it. It has to be located. So big P path is that list of directories that the bash shell will go searching through to find a command that matches what you type at the prompt. When bash doesn't find a command in your path that matches what you typed, you will get an error. So if I just type, for example, hello, well, that's not a command in my big P path. So the shell bash just went looking through that list of directories, didn't find anything to match hello, so that resulted in an error message. The command was not found. Whereas if I type ls, the shell will go look in my big P path. It will find that there is an ls command. It will execute it and then show me the results. That's big P path. Little P path is how we address individual elements on the system. So remember that the single dot is the present working directory for little P path. And I'll use that here in just a moment. So in fact, let's use it now. So I'm going to make a directory, and I'm going to call it week 5. And then a couple of things that you can do to enhance this command for practice sake. Now, when you're making a directory, I recommend that you always put a slash at the end of it. There is a not common but occasional error that can be, you can find yourself avoiding mistakes by putting that slash there, which I'll try to point it out when I have an opportunity to show you that. But anyway, when you're making a directory, you can just give it the directory name and that's fine. The shell, bash, will assume that you mean make a directory as a subdirectory of the present working directory. That's the assumption that the shell will make. But we can be explicit about the path, the little p path, by saying, actually, I want from the present working directory, I want a subdirectory called week_5. And I'm just recommending that you do these little p path steps when you practice your commands so that you get accustomed to seeing them. You just develop some memory of what they mean. So what does this mean? It means make a directory from the present working directory. That's what the dot means, named week 5. And then I just think it's good practice to put a slash at the end, since the shell will allow you to do that. And now we should have, if I do a listing, you can see it in blue, a week 5 folder. Now let's go into that folder. So we'll change directories into it. We could just say week 5, and the cd command will assume that I mean a week 5 folder that's a subdirectory of the present working directory, or we could be explicit about it and say the week 5 folder that is a subfolder of the present working directory, which is what the single dot is referring to. So now you can see my prompt has changed. So jboyt add debian : tilde, meaning my home directory, / week 5. So week 5, which is a subdirectory of my home, which is what the tilde is short for. Anyway, I'll do pwd just to make for sure that I'm in there. And now I'm going to start creating some content. So I'm going to do a listing. When you're doing a listing, you can just say ls and press enter, and the ls command assumes that you mean the present working directory, but you can be explicit about it and say, I want a listing of the present working directory. And if you want to put a slash at the end of things that you know to be directories, you could do that as well. So there's nothing in this folder. So let's now go create some things. Let me do a little bit of arranging on my screen so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I know this part's going to be boring, but I'm doing this in part to show you that I'm willing to do this work. And the only way that I got to some level of competence with VI is I typed stuff in. So I got better with VI the more that I used it. I still use it pretty often just because it's convenient if you know how to use it. First thing I'm going to try, though, is I'm going to see if I have, so I'm going to use the which command, and I'll discover that I do have a VI on my system in my big P path at user bin VI. Let me see if I have a VIM. I do not have a VIM. So I may go about installing that today. Where did I put that in my agenda? Yeah, let's install it. I'm going to install it later. I'll keep it in mind. So I don't have VI improved on my system, but before I close out today, I think I'll go install it and then play around with it a little bit. But in the short term, I'm going to clear. I'm going to do a listing to show I have no contents. And now I'm going to start creating the files that the hands-on experiments this week suggest I create. So I have my screen kind of a big mess right now. So sorry about if I miss questions for the short term. It's because I've got a whole bunch of stuff going on my screen. Okay, so I'm going to create week5a.txt. So vi, the editor command, space, and then the name of a file. The thing that we'll review right now is if you use the vi command with the file name, and that file name does not exist, then VI will create it and it will tell you about that. If you look at the bottom of the screen here, hopefully you're still looking at that. Yeah. If you look at the bottom of the screen, it's a little bit cut off by my cute little frame, but you can see I've got a new file. It's called week5a.txt, and then I'm going to start typing in the contents. So I hit the insert key so I can start typing. But if I am in doubt in VI, am I in command mode where I can't type text, or am I in insert mode where I can? If there's any doubt, just hit escape a whole bunch of times. All right, I'm in command mode, so I'm in a nice good spot. Now I'm going to hit the I key once. Now I'm in insert mode. VI doesn't tell me that, but I just know that I am, and I will confirm that because I'm going to start typing stuff. So dogs, cats, and I'm just typing and pressing enter. So I'm literally just, you can't see it on my screen, but I'm typing the contents of the file provided to us in the hands-on experiments. So I'm just going to type these real quick. Methods. These numbers are important for, you might have noticed, by the way, on tigers, I misspelled it and I backspaced. And the characters that I was backspacing over didn't disappear until after I typed back over them and pressed enter. So that's something to get used to as well. And it's a good reason to practice with VI, is because you'll get used to how it looks and feels. Anyway, I'm typing all this stuff, and the numbers are important because they will allow us to understand the experiments that we run better if we have these numbers as a reference point. You'll see this in a moment. 8 bears. And it's a lot. I'm not going to worry tons about typos. I don't like typos, but I'm not going to worry a ton about them. I'm just going to get all this content in there. Rats. Horses. Cows. I must have Googled animal names when I was doing this, because I don't think just while I was sitting there I could have come up with all these without some help. Not that there's any. There's another place where I backspaced over a typo. So I'm backspacing over a typo. You can see the cursor moved, but the text didn't. But I just know from practice that the things that I begin to replace the misspellings with, well, they'll start to go away. So I spaced, and then I'm going to type pandas again slightly more carefully.